The stories that made headlines in 2024. That's going to be the subject of this video. Welcome back, my beautiful people, to STR News and Digest, the podcast in which we discuss the exciting world of travel and short-term rentals and the business of travel and short-term rentals. Well, today I have a list of stuff that we're going to review. Now, this is the last podcast of 2024. I want to go back to some of the stories that we've talked about in prior STR News and some of the big headlines and some of the lessons that we learned from 2024 that we can take into 2025. So just to give you an idea of what we're going to be talking about, we're going to be talking about regulations. I've been talking about this for a while, but we're going to talk about it not only from the negative standpoint, but some of the positives that happened in 2024. We're going to talk about the Taylor Swift effect. I'll discuss that in a second. We're going to talk about, Airbnb's co-hosting network. Is it friend or foul? Is it something that's good or bad for the industry? We're going to discuss that. We're going to discuss the collapse of front desk. If you're not familiar with front desk, we're going to talk about that because it was once a very thriving short-term rental management company. We're going to talk about Airbnb versus Vrbo and what's going on there. We're going to talk about personalization, right? We're going to talk about how AI is taking over how we book and a few other things in terms of 2024, the company, my company, and in terms of where we're going in 2025. So let's start again. And the big one I want to talk about is regulations. Now, I've been, for the past at least 4 to 6 weeks, I've been talking about how regulation has affected our industry, specifically in Europe, where places like Barcelona, Madrid, Rome, Paris, all have either restricted in some form or fashion or added some regulations to the short-term rental industry. Now, one of the things that, and I know talking about regulation is a buzzkill, but one of the things you have to understand is that, in 2024, there was countries that either banned, froze, or did a crackdown or sweeping rule change on regulations. But 2024 was also the year of pushback. We had advocacy groups that fought back and in some cases actually won. You heard me talk about New York City a lot lately. One of the reasons is because New York City was one of the first major cities to heavily restrict and, in essence, banning short-term rentals. They made the restrictions so rigid that it made it almost impossible to operate as a short-term rental operator. But Airbnb did something smart. They went ahead and started doing studies and doing statistics as to why, or as to find out if in fact these regulations were actually helping or hurting. And Airbnb presented these findings in a recent commission meeting and showed them that the regulations, not only did they not help, but they hurt the city of New York. So that was a big win. And as a result of that, we're going to see some loosening of the regulations in New York City. But I'm going to talk about a couple of others. We talked about Portugal, Portugal and Barcelona to be exact, looking to either ban or heavily restrict short-term rentals. But advocacy groups like ROAR, RHOAR, and ALEP, it's ALEP, these two separate groups fought back. And as a result of them fighting back, Barcelona still hasn't implemented they haven't even defined what their new regulation is going to look like. And in Portugal, specifically Lisbon, we saw that them too decided to not go as strict as they originally planned. And I failed to mention one other advocacy group, which is the abbreviation is EHHA. That's EHHA. Like I said, look up these regulations or these advocacy groups. And if you're in that region, join them. And I'm going to tell you a little bit why. But the last thing in terms of regulation was Italy's, specifically Rome. What they did there was they restricted lock boxes, right? And they required the host to do the check-ins, meaning self check-ins were no longer a possibility in Rome. Again, they didn't totally ban short-term rentals, but this specific regulation makes it really difficult for that mom and pop operator and or that short-term rental management company that doesn't have the staff or enough people to go ahead and do these self check-ins. So that kind of really hurt the industry. Now, what can you do about this? I just mentioned it. Number one is get involved, people. Get involved with your local advocacy groups. Be a participant in your city councils, right? If anytime there's any type of city council, participate. See who are the leaders, who's your commissioner, who's your mayor, right? Get to know them. And whenever a discussion about short-term rentals come about, be the face of that and explain to them. Number one, it allows you to be more professional because you need to be abreast of what's going on in the industry. So it makes you a better operator, but it will allow you to educate these people, these politicians that are putting these regulations in without really understanding the industry, without really understanding the cause and effect of a regulation, right? So get involved, right? Build these relationships. The last thing I'm going to talk about that is to stay compliant. Regardless of where you are, regardless of the regulation, you must, it's not an option, that you stay compliant with the local rules and regulations. Now, this can be a competitive advantage in some cases because if you are staying compliant and others aren't, you're not going to come across and have some of the issues that arises when you're not compliant and when you get caught not being compliant. Now, talk about, let's move on to the next story. And this is the Taylor Swift effect. Now, Taylor Swift doesn't only fill up stadiums, people, or she doesn't only sell out stadiums, but wherever she goes, she also sells out hotels and short-term rentals, right? In fact, if you look at a study of where Taylor Swift went, I'm going to give you a couple of places like Chicago, like Paris, like Edinburgh, Scotland. When she went there, not only did she sell out the stadium, but she also sold out every single hotel and short-term rental available, which if you have a pricing or if you have dynamic pricings with your listing, if you're up to date with what's happening in your environment, and you have a software like Price Labs, you saw a big jump in your average daily rate in those areas because they anticipated this. So this is a big lesson for you guys. One of the things that we do, and I highly recommend you do the same, is that you stay abreast of what's going on in your community. Whenever there's an event, make sure you are adjusting your prices accordingly for that particular event. For example, for us in Miami, whenever there's a high profile bowl game, like now in January, we're going to have some bowl games, that affects it. We had the Grand Prix, that affects us. In Fort Lauderdale, we have Tortuga, the Winter Boat Parade, the boat show. These are all events that may not be well known to the general public, but for the core group of people that actually visit or participate in these events, they help boost the economy greatly. They also help boost short-term rental operators by filling up their properties. And again, if you have a pricing software or you're up to date with these events, you can benefit by adjusting your pricing accordingly. Now, having said that, don't go crazy, people. I don't, I've always said this, and I don't understand, and I don't want to use the word greedy. I'm not saying that you're greedy when you raise your rates, but don't go crazy with them, people, right? You can raise them because the demand is there, but I'll stop there. Just don't go crazy with that, right? So again, here's what you should be doing: tracking local events, tailoring your marketing plan for these events so that you can capitalize on the timing. Now, I'm going to address the marketing aspect of it. Being a short-term rental operator is difficult. We wear a lot of hats. There's a lot of things that go on in managing and operating a short-term rental, right? So this is one of the reasons why, and I'm going to plug the Dream Team Media here, is you should hire and get a good marketing team for your short-term rental. I can't express this enough. I just had a conversation with a property owner in terms of how they can maximize their short-term rental in 2025 without a heavy investment. And in their mind, they're thinking about adding more amenities, remodeling the home, which all are great. But when we're talking specific ROI, your return on investment dollar per dollar, there's nothing greater than a sound marketing plan for your short-term rental. I said this before, I'm going to say it again. I'm going to give you an example of McDonald's. McDonald's doesn't sell the best hamburger. They have the best marketing plan, right? Those golden arches are really well known around the world. Starbucks is another one. Starbucks demands high dollar for their coffee, and I don't really like their coffee. I don't think their coffee is great. But because of their strategic marketing plan, they're able to do that. So if you want a high ROI for your short-term rental, there's nothing better or more important than marketing. So once again, I don't expect you to be a marketing expert, and you shouldn't be because you're not in the marketing field. So you should hire a company like the Dream Media team to market your short-term rentals, not only because they're experts in marketing, but more importantly, they're experts in your industry. There's a lot of marketing companies out there that do a great job, but there's nothing more niche than short-term rentals. So you should hire someone that really understands the short-term rental industry, so you can maximize your marketing dollars. So let's move on to the next big news that happened in 2024. And Airbnb came out with a lot of new releases in 2024, but two major ones. The first one I'm going to talk about is their co-hosting network. Now, there's some people that love this idea, some people that hate this idea. I can tell you that if you are a short-term rental operator, specifically in the management side, and you don't own properties, right? All you do is manage other people's properties. This will put a hurt in your market, right? So for those of you that strictly manage other people's properties, just make sure you qualify for the co-hosting network and be a part of that, because it will affect that industry in 2025. There's no question about it. Most companies don't have the deep pockets that Airbnb has to promote this component, and most people are going to be heavily reliant on this. So now, on the plus side, I because we as a company, we do a little bit of both, right? We do co-hosting, we manage other people's properties, and we own our own properties. And we're currently increasing our portfolio and shifting our focus more in the resorts, the couple resort side, right? And I can touch on that a little bit, but for you as the operator, you're going to have to be part of this group. But there is some restrictions in it, and having that rating, that 4.8 rating as a co-host is going to be one of them. And if you have a large portfolio, it's very difficult to keep. Hence why I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. It's important that you don't have just one Airbnb account. That you have multiple Airbnb accounts and list your properties accordingly. So, for example, we are now separating properties, right? For example, our resorts, they're going to have their own account because it's its own separate category. Our glamping resorts, they're going to have their own account and its own separate category. Our residential homes, same thing. Our condos, same thing. So we're separating it, which number one, it's going to give us the ability to maintain that 4.8 rating longer so we can stay as part of this co-hosting network. And number two, it allows us to better analyze our data when we're looking at our portfolio. So understand that, right? So again, I'm going to give you three things that you should be doing. Number one is making sure you are adapting to the current market, right? Two is leveraging partnerships. I'm big on this. One of the reasons why we grew as quickly as we did is because we did some strategic partnerships. Those out there, and I'm going to encourage you to find that partnership. If it's us, phenomenal. If it's not us, I still recommend you find some leading group or leading companies in the industry. I don't like to use experts, but it's widely used. But I like to say someone that's leading in your specific area. Because I've always said this, there's a lot of people that call themselves experts, when in reality, they're not expert in the industry. They may be expert in their niche, right? And or their specific area, but they're not really experts because the short-term rental industry is so diverse. It's very regional based, right? What works in Miami doesn't work in Colorado. What works in Colorado doesn't work in California. And what works in the US doesn't work in Europe. So it's very regional. This is why I always say be cautious and be mindful of who you deciding to partner up with, because they might not be a good fit for you. Again, they may be an expert in their region, but they're not experts overall. Hence why I like to say, find someone that's a leader in your specific region and your specific property, right? And leverage that. Now, next topic, which is the collapse of front desk. Next topic, which is the collapse of front desk. Front desk, like I said, was a thriving US-based management company. Very similar to Vacasa, although Vacasa is still going, but Vacasa took a big dip, a hard hit in their portfolio. And here's one of the reasons why I think that happened, right? The same thing what happened with front desk is they could not sustain their rapid growth, right? I say this a lot. Growth is great. Growth is necessary, because if you're not growing, you're dying. But a controlled growth is paramount. It's critical, right? Too many companies grow too quickly, and what happened to front desk can happen to them, or at the very bottom or minimum is that they start to lose the quality of their work, right? Because there's just too much going on and they're going too quickly for their capabilities. This is why controlled growth is important. So here's what you should do to make sure the fate of front desk doesn't happen to you. Number one is audit your operations. You constantly need to be perfecting and and creating an audit for your operations to make sure that your quality of your services isn't diminishing, and that the growth is sustainable. Because people, some of you guys may have to bite the bullet and just completely slow the hell down. We had to do that. In 2022, we grew so quickly. Between 2018 and 2023, but specifically 2018 and 2022, we grew so fast that we could not keep up with the growth. And as a result, a lot of mistakes were made. And these mistakes, some of them were critical. I mean, we were losing thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars because of all these critical mistakes we were making. The quality of our services was dropping. We're starting to see some bad reviews as a result of that. Again, not good, right? So control growth it's great. Next, and I touched on this already, but focus on the strategies that allow you to grow steadily, but not super fast, right? Again, you need to grow. You need to constantly grow, but it's a steady growth that's sustainable. It's important. The next one, I kind of already touched on it, on partnership. Lean unto others, right? You're going to have to really find strategic partnerships, especially if you want to continue to grow steadily. Partnerships that are going to allow you to do that while still providing excellent services. Now, I kind of touched it. For example, don't wear all hats, right? There's certain things that you shouldn't be focusing on, meaning certain things you personally shouldn't be doing. You should be hiring out. For example, marketing. I've already talked about it. You should hire a professional marketing team to handle your marketing. If you're a company that is small and you want to expand in other areas, then partner with somebody that's in that specific area. So I'm going to give you an example. When I went into the Colombian market, I didn't go in head first. No, I studied the market. I looked to see who's there, who were leaders in the industry, and I recruited those people, right? I made those people part of my team, and I vetted those people. Whenever you enter a new market, the vetting process has to be there. I gave the story of David Green when he entered Jacksonville. He didn't properly vet the people there, and he grew way too fast. And as a result of that, he lost hundreds of thousands of dollars as a result of that rapid growth, and as a result of not having the proper systems and processes in place to protect himself. You should be doing the same. All right, now let's talk about advertising, right? I've already mentioned how Airbnb has deep pockets, and we can't compete with them. Hence why I have a love-hate relationship with them. Airbnb, and again, if you follow our channel and you look at our weekly STR News, I always talk about our business and where we are in terms of our numbers. And as you can see, one of our number one revenue source is Airbnb. So in particular, and usually it goes in this order. Number one is almost all the time is going to be Airbnb. We are number two in terms of booking sources. And number 3 and 4 flip-flops between booking.com and Verbal. Marriott is also in there, but because if we look at it per property revenue source, Marriott is actually number 3. But because Marriott's properties, because you have to be very selective of what properties you put on the Marriott platform, they don't, I have a large portfolio, but I don't have a large portfolio with Marriott. So if you look at just raw numbers, Marriott is really number 2 ahead of us in terms of per property revenue. But but because the portfolio is much smaller, that's not the case. But having said that, what the point here is that they have deeper pockets and they can promote more. So, and if you watch any kind of sports, specifically in the last couple of months since football season started, I'm sure you noticed the war and the battle between Vrbo and Airbnb. In fact, Vrbo, one of the probably best commercials I've seen from Vrbo is the Nick Saban commercial. Really like bad mouthing and throwing Airbnb under the bus, but it's really not Airbnb. Nick Saban is really throwing you under the bus because, again, and I've said this before, if you're the type of host that gives your guests a laundry list of stuff to do when they stay at your property, bad on you. You shouldn't be doing that. That's not their job. If you have to baby your property like it's your only child, don't be in this industry. I said this before. If you're not okay with people having sex on your couch, with people eating pizza in your bed, with people running around your property, then don't be in this industry, man. You're just making us all look bad. Right? Just leave. Do your own thing. Don't be a short-term rental operator. But Airbnb has taken that reputation that Airbnb has. Let me take that back. Vrbo has taken that bad reputation that Airbnb host has and created this phenomenal commercial. Anyway, the point here is that the battle between the two, which is I call the showdown between the two in 2024, was noticeable, right? There's Vrbo is finally advertising hard to take up some market space within the short-term rental industry. Now, part of this is because Expedia now owns Vrbo, and they recognize that they can't sit back and just hope to get people to book on their platform. That's part of it. But again, there's a big push for this. Now, here's a couple of things that you can do, right? Analyze your platform trends, right? Let me look at my notes here real quick. Yeah. So trends are important, right? Trends will help you strategize for 2025. And when we look at 2024, the trends that we saw and why we're heavily investing in short-term rentals, in platforms, is that there are a lot of new platforms that have joined the game that are doing fairly well. I've talked about Wednesday before. I'm going to talk about it now. Wednesday is a new platform that's doing great. Google Travel is another one that I highly recommend everyone be on. They're doing phenomenal. But there's a lot of other platforms that I highly recommend that you look at, you study, and see if they work for your specific area. But for us, like I mentioned before, Wednesday is one of them. Google Travel is another. Very good platforms to be on. So that's that. Now let's talk about the second to the last thing I want to talk about today is going to be AI, right? We've talked about AI before. I'm going to talk about AI again. AI is changing the way we travel. And I think of all the platforms right now, Airbnb has been on the forefront of this. And they announced it in their winter release, but it's not just Airbnb. Expedia, a lot of other OTA platforms are not using AI to what I refer to, they're being matchmakers, right? They're taking you, they're studying you, they're taking your data, they're looking to see what you prefer, and they're presenting what they believe you're going to either book or reserve, right? So for example, with Expedia, they're going to show you airlines that you frequently travel. They're going to show you routes that you frequently go to. They're going to show you properties that they believe you're going to book, right? Airbnb has done the same. I said this before, and I'm going to say it again, is the fact that the way we search online is going to be dramatically different in going into 2025, but more importantly in 2026, because they're going to have all the data they need and they're going to gather from 2025. So personalized travel is going to be huge. Hence, one of the reasons why we went vertical and bought a travel agency, because we want to provide you that personalized experience. We want you to be able to come to us, and then we're going to book your airline, your car rental, your excursion, your movie tickets, your property, everything in one platform, right? And it's going to be special, catered to you specifically, right? Huge, right? So, and like I said, Airbnb has taken the lead on this. Now, here's a couple of things that you can do to take advantage of this new AI experience, right? Make sure that your properties are optimized. Make sure you hit and check the boxes. Every box that you can check, make sure you check off. And I'm referring to amenities, locations, in your listing. All that stuff is hugely important. If you want to enhance your chances of being shown to a potential traveler, and for example, you don't have a pack and play, you don't have a high chair, suggest you get these things. Going into 2025, there's certain things that are going to be critical that you must have if you want to stay competitive. I'm not going to go through the entire list right now, but buy me a coffee. And if you want to have an in-depth conversation as to what are the key trending items, then we can have that. Or comment below and I'll do a specific video if I get enough interest on what's trending in terms of amenities. We can go into that. But, let me give you a couple of things that I'm referring to. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, having a jacuzzi was the thing. If you didn't have one, you were at a great disadvantage. Then became the sauna. If you don't have a sauna, it was a great disadvantage that you didn't have that sauna. So those are two examples that I'm talking about in terms of what's trending in terms of amenities. But having all the amenities are great, but if you're not properly marketing them, meaning if you're not checking these off on all the platforms so they show up in the search, if you are not using your social media to market these specific amenities, you're losing out, right? So again, everything's going to go back full circle to marketing. Marketing is going to be your most important thing you do for your property. More so in 2025, if you want to stay competitive, you have to have a strong marketing plan, right? Hugely important. All right, that takes care of the review of 2024. Those were the trending stories for the short-term rental industry. I may do another video because there's a lot of news in terms of travel on the travel side. Like for example, Southwest Airlines is completely changing the way they operate. They're going back to a more traditional model. JetBlue has expanded internationally. They're bringing business class to domestic travel. Those are big news, people. A lot of airports are remodeling and adding upgrades to them, like Boston Airport. So I may do a separate video on just travel, but I'm just super busy. But I may try to get that done before the end of 2024. Now, the last thing I'm going to go through is our numbers. Let me see if I can share my screen here real quick. All right, so here are our numbers. This is last week's number. I'm going to give you the numbers for the whole month in a second, but these are last week's number. We brought in 40,000, which is 5% less than the week prior. We had 269 nights booked, which is 11% decrease from the week prior. Our occupancy rate is 70%, which 10% decrease from the last week. But our average daily rate went up by 6% at 154. RevPAR is at 108. As I mentioned, here's the revenue source, right? Airbnb came in at $17,290. Booking is at 11,100. We came in at 6,350. Marriott is at 2,057. And all others at 2,077. RevPAR, 230, 267, 91, 212, and 222. So let's go for this month. This month was a good month. And here are the numbers for this month. Total revenue, $236,980, which is a 51% increase from the month of November. We're at 1,400 nights booked. That's 17% increase. A 79.45% occupancy rate, spot on. If you follow my channel, you know I want to be between 75 and 85, but 80 is the sweet spot. We're almost at 80%. It's a 19% increase. Our average daily rate is 164, which is a 20% increase. And our RevPAR is at 131, which is a 53% increase. December was a phenomenal month. Going into 2025, we're looking to have January, February, and March be phenomenal years. Now, I talked about how December was going to be a crazy travel month, and it definitely was. And we're looking at January, February, March also being higher than the last year. Having said that, I did a post, I did a tweet or X post, and also a thread post about patience, right? People, if you decide to travel during the holiday season, and I highly recommend everyone does, I did a lot of traveling, understand that you got to have patience. There's anywhere you went, airports. So for example, all airports were sold out. You had crazy crowds to the point that American Airlines system crashed right at, I believe it was Christmas Day or Christmas Eve, and they had to cancel a bunch of flights. It's just crazy, people. Our infrastructure, because of COVID, we haven't built that back up. We don't have the same amount of staffing, or not we, the airline industry. I don't believe, I can be wrong. Please fact check me on this. I know I don't think they surpassed pre-COVID numbers yet. So staffing is shortage. I know they definitely have a pilot shortage. So you're going to have issues in travel. And it doesn't matter if you're flying, you're taking a train, or you're by car. I mean, I'm in my vineyard. It normally takes me about a little under 6 hours to get from Miami to Georgia. But the last two trips, because I traveled Thanksgiving and now for Christmas, it's taken me an extra hour to get here, right? And again, you have to understand that because everyone's moving, everyone's traveling. The travel industry is really exploding, and there's no signs of a slowdown. It's going to continue to grow. Now, as a result, you're going to have a lot of operators getting into the game. That's, speaking of just the short-term rental industry, that's why you're seeing a decrease in occupancy rates and RevPAR. It's because there's an oversaturation of properties. But we have seen a slowdown, which is good. But we're seeing that demand is increasing. That's why you're seeing numbers like we're seeing for December. This is why our December was better than last December, and why it was a phenomenal December for us is because although there's an oversaturation of properties, demand has really surpassed the what's available. Anyway, my beautiful people, hope this was useful. If it was, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't subscribed, follow me on Instagram. Have a happy New Year, because I'm not going to see you until 2025. Love you guys.